Good afternoon. It's just before 3 o'clock. So we'll just wait another 2 more minutes just in case a few more people would like to join. And then we will jump straight into the session. Thanks, guys.
Say, you left the flowers on the table.
No, it's gonna come with the cake and that.
Okay. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining today. Today's session is relating to the construction regulations of 2025 and the proposed changes. My name is Fabian Buckley. I'm the Safety Director for WIB Construction Safety. And I'm going to run through this presentation, which I'm going to be speaking at an event in September. So I'll be sharing a similar presentation to what I'll be doing in September out in Limpopo. So thank you. If you have any questions, please speak, as I will not be able to see as I'm in presentation mode, if there's any hands that go up, etc. So please feel free to ask me at any time if you'd like ask any questions. Right, thanks. So let's start. So I'm not going to go through too much of the information pertaining to the government's role, etc., because that's going to take up too much time. So I'm going to primarily focus on the changes, and we don't have much time, so I'm going to do it within 30 minutes. I'm going to try and make it a quick one, just to touch on the most important aspects and to what has changed within the construction regulations. Okay, so just a little bit of background about myself. So I'm a safety manager. I've been in the safety industry now for 23 years this year. Got a NIBOSH International Diploma. I've worked extensively in South Africa, Africa, and also Asia, and also the Middle East. And I'm also a technical committee member. So that means I've been part of the same team that's drafted this current construction regulations. Okay, and I'll show you my appointment letter a bit shorter later in the presentation. Okay, so the content of this specific presentation, if you'd like me to send it to you, just pop me a message either on the chat or with your email address, and I will send it through to you so you can read it just for your own perusal. Okay, so let me jump straight in. Sorry, for those that don't know who I am and what I look like. Don't know if you can see me. Okay, so let's jump in. So the construction life cycle is based on the CBE's. Okay, there's some few people joining. Sorry. Okay, so the construction life cycle is based on the 6 stages, which is set out by the CBE. Now, those that are familiar with the SACP CMP, SACP CMP is one of the bodies that falls under the Council of the Built Environment. All right. So that's just a bit of background. So what they focus on is there's the 6 stages, which is your project initiation and briefing, concept and feasibility, design development, tender documentation and procurement, construction documentation and management, and the last stage is project closeout. Okay. So as part of the 6 councils, which I've mentioned at the bottom, you'd see that the function of these council is to lead and to also regulate as well as to coordinate the various councils, okay, as part of the CBE. So as I said, the role of governments, I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can read it after the presentation. It's going to take too much time. I'll just touch on a few aspects relating to the Department of Employment and Labor. So obviously, this is more of their baby, right? So it's something that is their concern that they've raised, and that's the reason why we've put together the proposal for the new construction regulations. So the history, for those that are not aware, the history of the construction regulations, it started out in 2003. That was the first promulgation of the construction regulation, and then it went on to the 2014 construction regulations, which we're all familiar with, that's been working with it in the industry. And now it's time for change now. It's 11 years later, and we have the new construction regulations of 2020. Well, possibly it'll be 2026, depending on when exactly it's going to be promulgated. Okay, so this is just a bit of permit stats from when it started. Obviously, as I said, the permit requirements only started in 2015 after the exemption that was in place. There was an exemption for a few months to allow everybody to get familiar with the requirements. And then from 2015 up until 2025, this was up until the 31st of March, there's been 6,115 permits that have been issued countrywide. And we can see that the Gauteng province, or Gangster's Paradise, has the highest. They have 1674, right? So some of the main reasons with regards to this was some of the common non-compliances were pertaining to the construction regulations CR9 risk assessment section. Others were the baseline risk assessment, which were confused with the task-based risk assessment or vice versa. Many people, even up until today, it's amazing that we have this topic, because many people still get confused between these terms. So it's something that's an issue across the board, within the industry. So the designer does not come to site. These are some of the concerns that were raised. No personal protective equipment, some of the common ones, and no shoring and bracing of excavations, no electrical certificate of compliance, our COCs, no medical fitness certificates, and no annexure ones that were being completed. So these are obviously some of the concerns that were raised by the inspectorate within the presentation that was conducted by them. Now, this is my technical committee appointment letter. You can see that it's been signed by Ms. Millie Reiters. She's the current chief inspector, and my previous one was signed by Mr. Tibo Asana. Okay. So this is just to prove that I'm not making up, I'm not fabricating stories. All right, so let's jump straight into some of the definition changes. Okay, so this is the ones that have come out the most prominent, let's say, with regards to the definition perspective, because there was many comments on this area, especially with regards to the public comments that's been coming through, or that were coming through, because obviously public comments have been closed. So the first section is speaking about the agent. Now, initially there was a discussion on the agent where it was a little bit vague. There was no proper understanding with regards to who the agent was. Some said it was a PR agent according to SSEP CMP. And in other sections of the law, if you read it, it becomes a bit confusing, where it actually reads as an engineer, because the same agent is required to conduct certain inspections on buildings after the buildings have been erected, etc. And in most cases, majority of PR agents are not engineers. So they are not the competent people to conduct those inspections. So we needed to have this clarification done. And that's why the change was brought in with regards to the agent. So the initial one was agent means a competent person who acts as a representative for a client. As you can read that can be anybody. An agent can be anybody in this regard. But the current agent that was revised means a professional construction health and safety agent registered with a statutory body approved by the chief inspector. And we all know which statutory body they are referring to in this regards. It is the SSEP CMP. Okay. The next definition was the old one. I've highlighted these in red, or I've placed it in red font, not highlighted, excuse me, just so that you can see what the change has been implemented, or what they're proposing, excuse me. So the next one is client, means any person for whom construction work is being performed. So what was changed? It was every person or entity who enters into a contract to have a construction project executed on their behalf during any of the stages relating to the construction works. Now we all understand when they're referring to the stages, they're speaking to the 6 stages which I previously presented. Next, we have a new definition, which is the construction health and safety manager. Now, this was one item that I also strongly pushed from my end, because I felt that the construction health and safety manager were neither here nor there. It was mentioned in the gazetted notice that was shared, which was signed many, many years back by Tobile Lamati. He was the previous chief, not chief, WIB, I forget his title now, but he was one of the senior guys at the Department of Employment and Labor, and he had submitted this gazetted notice. And on there, it indicated that there was a CHSO, as well as the CHSM, which is the Construction Health and Safety Manager, and the PR agents, who are required to be registered with the SSEP CMP. And the discussion on this was always, where does this construction health and safety manager fit in? Because in the act, in the law, they do not have a place. They are not functioning. So in reality, a construction health and safety manager does not actually hold an appointment letter based on the law, the current construction regulation of 2014. Now, people can argue the point and say, yeah, okay, appoint him as well as an 8.5 health and safety officer. But the point is, he's not a health and safety officer. You cannot appoint him as an agent, because he's not an agent. So he slots in between the two. Okay, so the definition here is a construction health and safety manager means a construction health and safety manager, as I've mentioned, registered with the SSEP CMP. The next one is relating to the construction health and safety officer. It's basically the same thing. It's just the terminology here is changed to construction health and safety officer, or what we've added in, excuse me, referring to the health and safety officer, and it's stipulating exactly the same thing. The next, we had the construction vehicle, which was in black, the previous section. The new one reads, means a vehicle used as a means of conveyance for transporting persons or material, or persons and material on a construction site for the purposes of performing construction work. So that was just a clarification that was changed, right? Next, we have the contractor. So the contractor in the previous one means an employer who performs construction work. Very vague. And in the revised one, we've indicated means an employer who performs construction work and includes an organization and or self-employed person that contracts with a client, principal contractor, or a contractor to carry out construction work. Okay, so it's a lot more prescriptive and descriptive as well in this definition. And next we have the design. So definition of design, it was in relation to any structure, includes drawings, calculations, design details, and specifications. The revised one reads, design includes drawings, design details, specifications, and bills of quantities, including specification of articles or substances relating to a structure, and calculations prepared for the purpose of a design. Now, what's important here, and because of time, I don't have so much time to go into too much detail with regard to this, but a huge focus or shift has gone now to the designers, because a lot of the projects where large fatalities or large numbers of personnel have been killed, especially with, like, for example, the mall in Tongaat. That's a perfect example. A lot of them are relating to the design. So there was poor design calculations, poor design when it came to consideration of the material to be utilized, the curing times. All of that was not properly defined by the designers. And in the past, they were always those the guys that were not in the firing line. But with the current revised construction regulation, the focus is now shifted a lot onto the clients and onto the designers as well. And then you'll see also some parts also for the principal contractors and contractors also. So under ergonomics, they've basically, what we've also tried to do here is to align everything that is already existing. So for an example, if there's an ergonomics definition under the ergonomics regulations, we're now utilizing that definition. Why? Because we don't want to create confusion within the industry by having different terminologies that are being utilized. So we want to clear out any of that and ensure that everybody is aligned and using the exact same information. So when we're referring to certain definitions, etc., everything should be, we should all be speaking from the same hymn sheet, okay? Sorry. So under the section, it says, means a scientific discipline concerned with the fundamental understanding of interactions among humans and other elements of a system, and the profession that applies theory, principles, data, and methods to design in order to optimize human well-being and overall system performance. Okay, so as I said, if you go to ergonomics regulation, under the definitions, you'll find exactly the same definitions used there. Under excavation works means the making of any man-made cavity, trench pits, or depression formed by cutting, digging, or scooping. The current one reads, means the making of any man-made cavity, trench pits, or depression formed by cutting, digging, or scooping, read with the definition of construction work. Now, why was this specific point added in here as well? To understand this, it was people were getting confused whether they are digging at a grave site, for an example. Okay, they're using an excavator there. They need to dig a grave. Now the people were wanting to apply for what you call this, a notification of construction work, your annexure 2s. They wanted to start. They started taking those to the Department of Employment and Labor. So the definition was important to add because they need to understand that this is relating to construction work. It's not just only about making a man-made cavity, trench pit, or a depression, etc., but it must be making it within the scope of work relating to construction. Okay. And then we had your health and safety file. Okay, this more or less stays the same. The only difference now is that they've included, or we've included, the electronic health and safety file, which is going to mean that you can be allowed to have a paperless system on site. That you, as long as you can demonstrate it to an inspector or to an agent, then it would be acceptable. So they're still working on the logistics around how they're going to manage this because of obviously issues pertaining to no internet access or things like that can have an effect on the inspectors coming to sites on that day and not being able to view this electronic file. So all of those things need to be considered, how they're going to manage this. And that's what we've been working on to see how they're going to close out that issue. But the only change is besides the physical file, it's also the option of the electronic file that one can have on site. And then when it came to a material hoist, means a hoist used to lower or raise material or equipment excluding passengers. Now means a hoist in the revised one used to lower or raise materials and equipment and includes cantilevered platform hoist, mobile hoist, friction drive hoist, scaffold hoist, rack and pinion hoist, and combination hoist. Okay, so again, this is now all the different hoists that have been mentioned within this. But again, you can clearly see that it is excluding passenger hoist or your LMX, right? Next, under your principal contractor definition, it means an employer appointed by the client to perform construction work. So what we've done is now we've just referred it back to the specific appointment letter. So under your 51K, it means a contractor appointed under regulation 51K to perform the specified duties. And then here we have your professional engineer. Now, you would see that what we've also included, which was not on the previous one, we've included or professional technologist or professional technician or certificated engineer means a person holding a registration as in terms of the Engineering Professions Act 2000, Act number 46 of 2000. So you can see that this is now going back to EXA, which is one of the bodies under the CBE. And then provincial director, they've just included additional information, means the provincial director, as defined in Regulation 1 of the General Administrative Regulations, 2003, also referred to as the Chief Director, Provincial Operations. So they've just added that information in there as well. And then what's new is also the terminology of project. It means a project which includes or is intended to include construction work and includes all planning, design, management, or other work involved in a project until the end of the construction phase. That term was not included in the definition. And then you have additional information relating to pre-construction, which was also not included. And why is this so important is because, as I explained, a lot of the fatalities that were happening on the projects especially were relating to design issues and issues that were pertaining to pre-construction work that had an impact on the actual execution of the construction work itself. So hence the reason why we've included this into the definitions, to make people understand that pre-construction is so important. It plays as an important, if not more of an important role than the actual execution of the construction work, because as we've seen, I mean, with the design collapse even of the Grayston, the Bryanston Bridge, the Tongaat Mall, etc., all of those were examples of poor engineering and poor design that led to multiple fatalities. Okay, so let's jump in. Pre-construction information means information in the client's possession or which is reasonably obtainable by or on behalf of the client, which is relevant to the construction work and is of an appropriate level of detail and proportionate to the risks involved, including information about the project, planning and management of the project, health and safety hazards, including design and construction hazards, and how they will be addressed. This is important as well. So you will see when it comes to the revised definition of an engineer and the requirements of the engineer, the shift has now been placed, as I said, that we've shifted the goalpost now to focus on the engineer. What have you done, Mr. or Miss Engineer, as far as your design is concerned? What risk assessments did you carry out to ensure that you are executing the work in a safe manner, your designs are safe, your calculations have been well factored in, and that all various safety factors have been considered? Okay. And then the next one is information in any existing health and safety file. Okay. So that is, again, anything that's relating to pre-construction information would also be linked and included within the health and safety files. All right. So that will be inclusions to the safety file. And then under scaffolding, all we've done here is it's components or system used to build a scaffolding. You would see even in section 16 of the construction, regulations, you will see that we've basically referred it to the SANS 10085. Okay, that's what we've done. Instead of reinventing the wheel relating to scaffolding, all we've done is refer everyone to the SANS standard, which is our guideline that we need to follow. Everyone will use the same thing, so that there's no ambiguity and there's no confusion that's being created. And then when it came to a suspended platform, This created a lot of confusion within the industry, because every time somebody had a scaffolding built and it was a hanging scaffold, or automatically everyone was running around like headless chickens, because we needed to go to the Department of Employment and Labor for approval. Why? Because everyone was of the understanding that this is now a suspended platform. So the definition is clear. It says, means scaffolding suspended by steel cables from overhead supports. So that takes out the confusion of a hanging scaffold being considered now as a suspended platform. Okay? So it's quite clear. And then under section 2.1 and 2.2, these regulations are applicable to all persons involved in construction work for the duration of the project life cycle. Also in regulation 11.2, it's applicable to owners of structures for the future lifetime of the structures as well, because that was also an important factor to consider. Many a time, everyone focused only on the actual construction execution, but the inspections that needed to be done thereafter, nobody went back and verified that these things are being done, or that they are being done, and who's verifying that they are being done. So now it's being added into the regulations. So under the construction work permit section, you'll see the items in red. So if everybody would remember, let me see. Okay, there's an exemption here. Okay, so let me just show you this first. So on the 7th of August, 24th of July, there was 2015, there was a government gazette notice 641, and that one had specific criteria and requirements relating to the exemption. Then the next one came out that was signed by Mr. Sana, Tsibo Sana, was on the 7th of August 2018, and that exemption is still in effect even up until today. It's still being used. So there's nothing that's been changed. So what we've decided to do was, instead of us keeping an exemption open for such a long period of time, basically all we've done is we've included the exemption points into the section pertaining to the construction work permit. So you'll see that we've changed it. Before, they had so many hours of man hours worked, etc., was included in there, and it was up until a certain percentage of amount. I think it was, what was the amount again? It was 30. You see, they had 3,600 person days of construction work. And then they had an amount as well that was in the 2014 regulations, also that came up with the guidelines that they included. So I think at the time it was 30 million, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so you'll see now that we've changed it. So let me go back. It's now a grading level 7 and above. Okay, the previous one read grading level 6 and above. Okay, and then what we've also added into this is exceeding 2 stories above ground level. So that was not a requirement in the previous permit, construction work permit. So before it read anything of a single dwelling, etc., you did not require to have a construction work permit. Now anything exceeding 2 stories above the ground will require you to have a work permit also. So that's again now does not only mean 365 you must comply, grading level 7 only you must comply. If any one of the ABC is applicable, you would have to apply for the construction work permit. Okay. And in your annexure 2, that's pertaining to your notification of construction work. So nothing has changed in this regards. Obviously what would change is the appointment letters. So where the appointments have come in, which I'll quickly go into. So I just want to run on this one, and I'm going to go quickly into the appointments because of time, and so that we can make sure that we get everything discussed as much as we can for this period we're together. So under CR 5.1, you see that what we've included into the section A is prepare a documented design risk assessment for an intended construction work project. Now, the requirement for this is not only on the client, it's also on the designer. Okay, so the designer is also required to ensure that there's a design risk assessment in place, the client will make sure that the designer has conducted the design risk assessment. So you would see that the baseline in itself will then fall away from the permit requirements because of the design risk assessment now that has been put into play. So the baseline risk assessment conducted by the principal contractor will still be done, but it is no longer the requirements of the client. All right, so that's just speaking about the specification. Nothing has changed nothing's changed in this regard. It's still the same. And then what we've added in here under the section is the designer takes the prepared health and safety specification into consideration during the design stage and provides a written report. So that was not a requirement before. And then another important point here is that ensure that potential principal contractors submitting tenders have made adequate provision for the costing of health and safety. So what we found in the past was that principal contractors were submitting tenders, but they were obviously putting in the lowest cost that they could because they were obviously trying to get the job. But the problem came in is that they were costing so low that they were cutting out the requirements of safety that needed to be implemented on those projects. So with this being included in the proposed construction regulations, the changes to it, it is now forcing all contractors to ensure that proper provision for health and safety has been made and that it is something that is notable. So even if you're going into a kickoff meeting or bid clarification meeting, you should be able to ask as a client or client agent or representative, you should be able to ask and say, show us your costing, how you costed for this job when it comes to health and safety. What provisions were made? So now we can clearly see that the companies are going to have to beef up their tenders. We're obviously compiling their tenders. They're going to have to beef it up so that they are not just going in on the bare minimum, but they're going to now have to come up to the level required by law. And then after that, they can consider all other aspects of their costing. All right, so the next one is pertaining to provided that where there are multiple principal contractors or contractors on site appointed by the client shall coordinate cooperation between contractors to ensure health and safety control. So this is now putting a lot more onus on the client. Obviously, the client will shift the responsibility to a construction health and safety manager or to an agent, depending on the size of the project. Okay. And then this is just an inclusion to say provide sufficient information and resources to the principal contractor. That's not changed. And then I said before, physical or electronic health and safety file. That's the only change there. Now, this is what I wanted to quickly touch on. So this is some of the major changes that have come into play under section 8. All right. So 8.1 stays the same. That was previously it was your construction your construction manager. Okay. Under section 8.1, remember previously it was 8.2 for the assistant construction manager. We've now added 8.1b, which now clearly groups them into one bundle, showing 8.1 is relating to the construction managers. 8.2 is relating to the construction health and safety managers. So now we have an appointment letter for this individual. A principal contractor may, upon having considered the size of the project in writing, appoint one or more construction health and safety managers for different sections thereof to ensure occupational health and safety compliance. Now we have a role, we have a defined appointment, and now we understand that this person now has some responsibility as far as the construction health and safety manager is concerned, position that they hold, okay? Under section 8.3, as a construction manager must in writing appoint construction supervisors responsible for construction activities on the construction site. Remember that was 8.7 and 8.8 was relating to the assistant construction supervisor. You see, we've grouped it as A3 and A3. They should have actually read A3B. I must actually just speak to them about that. So A3A would have been the assistant construction supervisor under this section. Okay. And then a contractor may, after consultation, this is relating to the safety officer. So you see that the safety officer appointment now was also changed. It was 8.5 before, it's now moved to 8.4. Okay. So appoints a full-time or part-time construction health and safety officer in writing to assist in the control of all health and safety related aspects on the site. That's the only change there to the safety officer section. And then this is still the same, nothing has changed. Obviously, we've just included the health and safety manager within the section as well. For the inspector to determine if is there sufficient number of construction health and safety managers on that project. So they can look at the project based on risk, based on location, based on size of area, etc., etc. There's various aspects that they can look at that they would utilize to determine whether one safety manager is sufficient or more than one safety manager and officers would be required for that specific project. And then under section 9, what we've included is section C as contemplated in 9.1D and E. So it's just relating again to that specific section. And it is not exceeding 12 months when it comes to our reviews of risk assessments. Okay. So we've been a bit more prescriptive in that regard. So yeah, nothing has changed. So this section has changed relating to sections CR13. So this is not Cyril Ramaphosa 13. This is now relating to Cristiano Ronaldo. This is relating to the excavation section, right? So where any uncertainty pertaining to the stability of the soil still exists, the decision from the designer reference to in 6.1, which is the appointed designer by the client, is decisive, and such a decision must be noted in writing and signed by both the competent person contemplated in sub-regulation 1 of this section and the engineer or technologist, as the case may be. So you see that we've linked this section back to the designer, so that we need to make sure that they have the final say when it comes to such decisions that are being made. Because we've encountered it too many times where people were passing away because of engulfment due to collapses of walls, etc., that are not being properly shored or braced, etc. All right, and no proper consideration for the design of that and the stability of it, considering the soil types, etc. Right. And in continuation of 13, it speaks about that must ensure that no load material, plant, or equipment is placed or moved near the edge of any excavation where it may cause its collapse and consequently endangers the safety of any person, unless precautions such as the provision of sufficient and suitable shoring or bracing are taken to prevent the sites from collapsing. All right. So you can see that this was not considered previously. We know that shoring and bracing was being utilized, but some people argued the point and said, the law doesn't require it because it's not stipulated. So we've now gone more prescriptive in that regard. Okay, so under demolition work, that stays the same. We've only included that the competent person in writing to supervise, control all demolition work. And here again, we've referred to be carried out by a competent person, and that the method statement on the procedure to be followed in demolishing the structure is developed by that person. Okay, so it's clear now to understand who is the person in charge, who is this person. It is a competent person who is there to supervise the demolition supervisor. Okay. And then other changes to CR14. So 14.6 and 14.7 have been moved to Construction Regulation 27. Section 49 has been updated to the asbestos abatement regulation. Obviously, we know that the previous one referred to the asbestos regulations, and that's been revised to the asbestos abatement regulation of 2020, and then also relating to specific reference to explosive act and regulation. It's not a legislation, okay? So it's just referred to that section. And then, as I've mentioned, pertaining to scaffolding, section 16.2 has been removed. Basically, 16.2 has become 16.1. And as we said, the requirements are that you need to follow the requirements of SANS 10085. Okay, so rope access. This is new. The section is ensure that all rope access operators are competent to carry out their work. Now, what's important to note in this as well is that you'll see that the Working at Heights Institute has been what you call this? They've been accredited. Well, it's not really accredited, man. It's they've been certified as a body by SAQA, which allows them to certify contractors, trainers, etc., to ensure that the people that are being trained are competent. So they are now in the process of getting training providers, etc., enrolled with them, and they will start having specific criteria and requirements for these specific people, including rope access, utilization of your mobile elevated work platforms, scaffolders. All of that will fall under their scope of work. Okay, so that's just a heads up with regards to what is coming on the horizon. I actually attended a presentation a few weeks ago where these items were also being discussed. And then CR22 is aligned to 2015. Also note that the latest National Code of Practice, which is what we've referred to in the section of CR22. Water environment, we've only added a fall protection plan that needs to be included to prevent people from falling into the water before they need to actually be rescued. Okay, and that was what we've included there. 26.2 was removed and it was covered under section 26.1. So 26.2 has been completely removed. And then housekeeping and general section, you'll see that it complies with the requirements set out in regulation 14.6 under incorporation of demolition work, where this was previously in the housekeeping section. We've now included it in the demolition section under section 14.6. Okay, and then this is just the TC. Who makes up the TC? It's still the same, nothing's been changed. There is a proposal that they were looking at adding additional personnel, specifically from business and organized labor, but that hasn't been finalized as yet. Okay, and then approved inspection authority has been completely removed from the law, from the act. You will no longer find an inspection authority within the construction regulations. There are still AIAs. Don't misunderstand what this means in this section. It's only meaning that from construction regulations from the Department of Employment and Labor, they are no longer recognizing people as in the sense of an AIA under the law itself. Okay. The annexures are still the same. Sorry, there's no change for Annexure 1 pertaining to your permit. Annexure 2, obviously, as I've mentioned, there's going to be changes pertaining to the appointments and in the inclusion of also the Construction Health and Safety Manager, Section 8.2. So that will also be included within the Annexure 2. And then under Annexure 3, which is relating to your medical fitness, there is no change. Okay, so this is a good example of the conclusion of what you can see relating to the client and the designer and the principal contractor and the various sections of what has been included. So yeah, that's the presentation, ladies and gentlemen. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions from anyone before we close? Okay, so I see Dingy has requested the presentation, no problem. I'll share the presentation with you. Obviously, going to PDF it for you and then I'll send it to you. Okay. Anything else? Any questions? Any comments from anyone? Happiness? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your time and appreciate your time that you spent with us today. And I hope that you've learned something from it. And yeah, we hope that some of these inclusions will be considered. Obviously, we know that there was still comments from public that were being considered. I can't remember. I think the cutoff was sometime in early July or June. But I know that it's now done. So now we just wait on the next steps and hopefully we'll have our new construction regulations implemented very soon. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves, and it was a pleasure having you with me today. Thank you.